Hey, everybody. All right. Thanks a lot for joining me for Choose Your Own Adventure with Google Slides as well as Google Forms. I'm going to post a link in a moment to the chat where you can access the slide deck that I'm going to use. And I think I'm going to do that first. So just give me one quick moment here. I posted it earlier, but for some reason it did not come up on YouTube. So I've just posted it in again, and I see on my phone that it's come up. So I do encourage you, as I have my phone going here, please throw in questions and comments. What we're going to do is not super difficult, but it does take a little bit of thinking. Okay, so I'm just going to share my screen with you now, and we're going to go through how to create your own choose your own adventure story using Google Slides, which is pretty cool. Give me a moment here to pop this up. And while we're waiting for that to load, I just want to remind people or let people know, if you're here for the first time, across Asia Pacific, we've got many sessions, dozens of sessions in multiple languages from Japan to India, but also around the world. We've got people presenting in Kuwait and Brazil and Colombia and England and Mexico. We've got a lot going on. So, please enjoy the weekend. Please check out in the schedule what other sessions and events are going on. And we use the hashtag GEG APAC, GEG APAC. So find us on Twitter and join us. I'll put links to all that stuff a little bit later towards the end. And remember, we are going to give certificates for people participating. You can find those in the schedule with a link, or just kind of wait until the end here, and then I'll post it as well in the comment section on YouTube. We are here for Choose Your Own Adventure activities using Google Slides and Google Forms. We're going to focus on slides because it is a little bit easier. So essentially, we're going to talk about what it is to create a CYOA, Choose Your Own Adventure story. You probably won't create a book, probably a story, but it's a way to be creative. It's a way to gamify your classroom a little bit. And for your students, as well as yourself, it's a way to develop skills in computational thinking and creativity, really. So we're going to kind of walk through that. We're going to start with me telling you about what you have to think about when creating a choose your own adventure story, those things you want to keep in mind. But keep your students in mind, because if they're working alone or collaboratively, it's a great way for them to get creative, as well as really build those computational thinking skills. Where does this lead and that lead? You'll see what I'm talking about in a moment. So we'll talk about why do CIOA? Well, I just kind of mentioned that, I think. We'll look at the basics, and we'll look at a few examples using slides and forms, Google Slides and Google Forms, that is. And then we're going to kind of think about the problems you might encounter, the problems you might have when you create your own choose your own adventure story. And then we're going to do a hands-on. So I will need you in the chat. It's much better if we do this together. So, give me your ideas as we build something together. A little bit about me. My name's Nate. I live in Japan, but I'm originally from Canada. I teach diploma program history as well as middle years program, individuals and societies at Nagoya International School in Japan. I've been here for about 25 years. I do educational technology consulting, but it's kind of on the side. I was a technology coach, but I love to be in class. So I went back to being the classroom teacher. And you can see here with YouTube, Twitter, and my website and my training site, you can reach out and connect with me in any way. I will point out my website's got some activity ideas and things like that. And my trainer site is stuff for you to download. This slide deck, for example, is there if you want to use it and train other teachers. So first, why CYOA? Human nature is all about storytelling. Humans have been telling stories for, ever since we could communicate verbally with each other, right? Maybe not even verbally, but by, painting on rocks and things like that. Storytelling is inherent to human beings. I mean, you tell stories every day, right? We always tell how your day went or how something works. I mean, it's storytelling. So we can help students recognize that, as well as understanding the story arc, right? The beginning, the middle, the end, and what makes a story engaging. It also allows for creativity. And I mentioned earlier, computational thinking. With choose your own adventure stories, making them, it really does require computational thinking because you have to think about the path that each decision is going to make. And that's part of the challenge. Um, it's fun. It does take a little bit of time, but it is cool. Also for our kids, especially our students, if they create their own, it gives them voice to their ideas. Great for collaboration, great for gamification because CYOA stories are quite fun. So keep that in mind if you're thinking, I'd like to do this in my class. And don't worry about having to make an example, for your students to use. Just give it to them and let them go. You'll make mistakes together, and that's pretty cool. And by the way, please post comments in the chat because we like interaction here. Now we're going to start with trying things out. Now here's some examples that I've found online that I think are kind of cool. We'll start with the secret village. You can check the other ones out on your own. We're going to do one of each, slides and forms. So here is the secret village. So in your class, what you would do is share this deck with them. Wait for it to load, of course. I've got a number of tabs open, so it's taking a little bit of time. And then they're going to click slideshow. Now you can set it so that you go to file and you get print settings and preview and that kind of thing. And then you can have them look at it just like it's online, like this. And I'll put together a tutorial video on how to do this sooner or later. The secret village. So once upon a time, there's a girl called Maggie. Her parents had died when she was born. One day she decided to explore her parents' room. In the dust, the room rampant. Suddenly she looked to her left and saw a map. What do you do? I know if it was me, I'd want to look at it. Or do you ignore it? Anybody? I'll give a second we got some people watching right now. Walk to it or ignore it. What do we do? Come on now, somebody type. I'm going to take the first answer. Okay, nobody typed ignore or walk. I'm going to say we're going to walk to it. Okay, Kevin. All right, thanks. Hey, good to see you, Kevin. It's been a while. All right, let's walk to it. What does this map lead to, Maggie Wonder, right? You want to make sure you do your editing properly, by the way. Explore or throw it away. All right, Jay said walk as well. I love it. So Kevin and Jay, what do we do now? Do we explore the map or do we throw it away? I'm going to wait for you now that I know you're in. Explore. All right, Jay says explore. Going to jump in. Maggie ran downstairs and packed everything into her bag. After that, she took one look at her map, and the map says to go in the forest next to her house. So, do what the map says or do opposite of what the map says. Keep in mind that, if you were to do this with your class, you could do it together like we are doing online right now. And in between each slide, you could say, why did you choose that decision? Why did you choose that decision? They could work on their own and write down their decisions and the reasoning for those decisions so they can actually use it as a thinking and expression activity. All right, Kevin says forest. Do what the map says. All right, we're going to the forest. You rock already. Thanks, guys. Or, well, Jay, I don't know if you're, male or female, but thanks, Jay. Thanks, Kevin. She quickly ran into the forest, left next to her house. Suddenly she stopped. There was a big pond on the way. Where's the bridge? She asked herself. Cross the rocks, a strange man, noise whispered to her. Again, editing, right? Editing. I chose this because it is kind of a fun little story here. So what do? Do opposite of what the man said or do what the man said? Maybe this lesson is about, opposites, right? It could be an English language lesson. And Jay says, thanks for sharing the Google Doc. You're very, very welcome. But what I need to know is, do we cross the rocks or do we not? Do we do what the man said or not what the man said? Waiting for an answer here. Otherwise, I'm going to do it on my own. And I realize too, as I'm watching online, there's a little bit of a time lag. But again, think about, what could you do? Opposite. All right. Kevin says opposite. All right. We're going to go opposite. So she does the opposite of what the man said by swimming across the pond. Brr, the water is so cold. Oh no, I'm all wet. Maggie shivered as she said. She carried on walking, and then suddenly, a mud full of pond? Seriously? Just walk across it, a strange lady's voice whispered to her. Cut the tree and turn it into a bridge, or walk around the mud. And Jay also said, do what the man said. So Kevin and Jay already had different ideas, right? Which means your students in your class might have different ideas and they could explain why, right? So I'm going to wait another moment because, again, as we broadcast live, there is a 15 to 20-second lag time. All right, Jay says cut the tree. So we're going to cut the tree and turn it into a bridge. Problem solving right there, folks. Kevin also said mud, yuck, make a bridge. Love it. Just walk across it, a strange lady's voice whispered to her. Okay, I'll walk across it by a tree bridge. She finally got out of the mud. She walked and walked until she saw a choice. That is press the tree or jump into the water. Now, I assume press the tree means keep going with the tree, but what do we do? Notice here, too, in the design, the person who made this decided to make it look like a button, which is kind of cool because it is digital. It looks like a keyboard. You want to think about that when you design things. And remember, with slides too, you could put a whole picture and an image here. This is a minimalist example, but it's very effective because you focus on the text and not, images and that kind of thing. All right, Jay says jump into the water. So we're going to jump into the water. Here we go. Okay, I'll jump into the pool. Maggie pressed the button on the tree. I'm falling. Help, help. Maggie said to herself. She landed on the village. Maggie, is that really you? You've grown so much. The man and the ladies, Maggie's mom and dad, appeared again. But I thought you died in the fire, Maggie replied. Your mom was taking care of the forest, and I'm taking care of the village. Oh, and we didn't die. We escaped into the forest and found this village. I miss you so much, Mommy and Daddy. So I guess you found the map, right? It's a long story. So it's kind of a, Kevin says, water. So in the end, it's kind of a happy story, though it seems a little bit dark. So that's just one example of a story that I kind of grabbed. I might copy that actually and fix the some of the problems in there with the grammar. But here's a really short one with left home alone. I'm going to go through this very fast so we can jump into how we build the choose your own adventure story, specifically with Google Slides, but we'll have a little time for forms. So you're left home alone. Your mom had to run to the store and left you home alone. She gave you very specific instructions. Do not answer the door. She's gone about 15 minutes and the doorbell rings. I'm going to choose answer the doorbell because I know myself. And I choose next. And remember, this is used with Google Forms, right? There is no one at the door, but there's a brown package with your name on it. Bring it inside or leave it outside. Knowing me, when I was a kid, I'd bring it inside. Hey, it could be a Christmas present, right? Click next. As soon as you get the package inside, it starts to shake. Throw it back outside or you open to see what's inside. When I was a kid, I think Kevin says I was a bad kid. Sometimes I'm going to open the package because, it could be a puppy. You never know, right? You open it, out pops a leprechaun, and he grants you 3 wishes. I'm going to go back and see what would happen, though, if I didn't. You open the package and see, no, you throw the package outside. Oh, and it takes it somewhere else. Your mom arrives, walks through the door, and there's a little puppy. I'm going to click next, though. It says submit to the ending, and then there's a leprechaun as well. All right. So that's a very simple example of Google Forms. Now, I'm going to jump in We're going to try the same idea with Google Slides. In fact, these two are something that I'm working on with for my students this year in grade 9. Can you avoid becoming a refugee? So very quick, I give the situation. I've got my instructions here. Use a worksheet. I'm going to give them a worksheet. I've been developing it to explain their decisions, which is what I had mentioned a moment ago. So here's the situation. What do you do? Very quickly, option 1 or option 2. This is the same template we are going to use together. Click on one, then you wait it out. Something happens. What do you do? Click again. It takes you somewhere else. What do you do? Click again, click again. So you get the idea. Now, I haven't finished this, but I wanted to show it as an example. And the same story using Google Forms. Whoa, that didn't work out. Whoa, excuse me for one moment. Let me jump down here again. There we go. So I start with a provocation, right? What is it like to be a refugee? Can you avoid becoming a refugee? This is all an empathy activity, right? Okay, and stick with us here for a bit because we're going to start making together. But you notice here, it's the same idea. You've got a situation, and then they have options, and they choose one and go to next. And then there's an explanation. This was not an irrational choice, especially when, and then some other situation arises, and then they choose. Now, note here, I've written option 1A1 and option 1A2. I have deliberately put those in there for myself as I build this in Google Forms. And I don't have any, background colors or, heading text or images or anything like that. Eventually, I'm going to put that in. But what I want to highlight is that for my building, I am putting in option 1A, number 1, and 1A, number 2. So we're not going to go through the whole thing. I mean, we could. I'll just do a couple more here. And it can get complicated. I personally feel that Google Slides is easier to work with, and I'll explain why a little bit later. So let me close this. And I want to jump back into the challenge of building CYOA, Choose Your Own Adventure Stories. And feel free, you know what, as we're waiting in the middle, type in the comments, what is an example of an idea that you would have to use this? All right, so here is one of the challenges of CYOA, right? You've got the initial situation, you have one option and a second option. And then there's got to be a consequence, right? Something happens with each one. And then with each thing that happens, you need another option. And each option needs a couple of consequences, right? This happened, so you can choose this or you choose that. It can get confusing as you build. You're going to see in Google Slides what I'm talking about in terms of how to actually build this stuff. So it's important that you start with a plan. I would say get a piece of paper. This is not an example, but try to map it out. I use landscape. I want to say I always use, but I don't because I'm still working on my first formal one. I've worked on a few, but they haven't worked out. But one I'm definitely going to use on becoming a refugee. I've got it mapped out and I got to dig it up. It's probably on my desk at school. Write it out, in a pen. I do have a template that you can use in Google Docs, but that can get confusing as well, I find. So here's the idea. Have a plan and try it with students first. Maybe find a good CYOA online, get them to play it, and then, see how they feel about it and say, all right, let's make one. And if they work in groups, they're obviously creating together, they're collaborating, they're coming up with that story arc. You'll get a lot of discussion from them. So starting off with students working in groups is a better idea. And, if you have, 2, 3, 4 people, somebody might notice the mistake in the computation, in the math. That doesn't lead to this. Or when you're building it, someone's going to notice something, which is why working in groups is a great idea. Start small. That's what I'm pointing out right here. Let the story evolve. Um, Try it really simply. If you want to use an example for your students, do something really quick. And, it takes literally 2 minutes, like we just did a moment ago. You could drag it out to 5 or 10 minutes by asking them, what would you do? What would you do? Why would you do that? Why would you do that? And then kind of build up the excitement of this is kind of cool. And then get them to build their own. It's not difficult, but it can get complicated, right? And I do have a template for you. So here are some examples. Here's a template using not numbers, but pick your path kind of thing. I got this. This is a direct link, I believe, actually, to the person that created it. But you see, it's got option 1, 2, and then 1.1, 1.2, 2.1, 2.2. The only problem with this is that as you scale down, these boxes are going to get smaller and smaller. So you have to choose the way you want to do it, which is why for me, even though I love technology and use computers all the time, I write by hand. A3 piece of paper, I recommend, maybe even bigger. And these are all linked in the slides deck for you. Now, here's one that I did put together myself. Catch title, introduction, first page. And here's your first situation. Now, I put these X's in here to note that this is separate. This is all this stuff goes together. Situation, option 1, option 2, 1 in red, 2 in green, and then the next one. And then you have option 1, option 2 connected to these options. And then the 2 options in green connected to this green 2 options. So you can see how it could get complicated, which is why maybe you want to choose this kind of mind map to get your plan going. All right, so we come out here. So this is here for you to use. It's not completely developed because it's your story to develop, right? All right, now let's see. Got a completed template. Hold on, let me just pull this one up here. Okay, now we're going to start building something together in just a moment. So I will need your feedback. So Jay and Kevin. Sorry, Kevin. I know who you are, by the way. We've met each other a bunch of times. We're going to work on something together, but I just want to point out that this is what we're going to work on. Here's a template, and here's a Google Forms template, and you can make copies of these things. All right. Yeah, and we'll come back to that a little bit later. So let me just grab this template. Now I'm going to share it with you as a viewer, but we need to create this together to make this really fun. In fact, I'm going to change that. Anyone with the link, I'm going to copy the link. I'm going to post it in the chat. Thanks, Kevin. I appreciate that. All right, so now we are going to build something together. So this is where we need to kind of talk together and work together. Now, I am going to start this because I do find that if I present this and we talk about, hey, what do you want to do? Something that kind of usually works out, something in the school. All right, so there's something in the school. All right. So now we want to, put the background in, right? So this is what we want to describe, to students, right? There's something in the school. You're at school one day, but it doesn't seem normal. And you're going to notice I don't type very well. Now, if we were to do this with our students, obviously we're going to put a little bit more time into this. I heard a big noise in the cafeteria. All right, so let's do this. So they're going to move to the next slide. Notice I don't have anything linked in these slides because if they were to look at it as a presentation, right, background. You're at school one day, but it doesn't seem normal. And here's the first situation. So Kevin's given us, I heard a big noise, and you corrected yourself, but I knew what you were saying. All right, so here's the first situation. Right. So tell us, what do we do then? Kevin, what we heard a big noise in the cafeteria. There's a big noise in the cafeteria. What do you do? So that's all you need, really. There's a big noise in the cafeteria. What do we do? Do we check out the noise? Do we stay where we are? Or do we do something else? And Jay, if you're still there, jump in and tell us. I'm going to wait because there is a little bit of a lag time here. Call the teacher. All right. So your first option is call your teacher, but call the teacher. Now note, it says here that this goes, all right, call the teacher or go to the cafeteria. All right. Oh, that's a good point because we heard a noise in the cafeteria, but we might not be there. Go to the cafeteria. All right. These are great examples, actually. Thank you, Kevin. So what I want to point out is, and I'm going to go to slideshow again here so you can see this. A note here in the template, it says goes to slide 4. So what do? Call the teacher. What do? Go to the cafeteria. So call the teacher must go to slide 4. So building this, the very first thing we want to do is go to slide 4 and then slide 5. So slide 4, and you can see that right here. It's slide 4. All right. So the option from slide 3 was you called the teacher. And just going back to be sure, go to the cafeteria, go to slide 5. So we go to slide 5, and note here we are on slide 5. And you went to the cafeteria. So now what we have to do, all right, so our last situation, call the teacher. We're going to delete that. Go to slide 4. We're going to delete go to slide 5. And then we're going to go to your first option from the original thing. You call the teacher, and the teacher asks you to show her where you heard the sound. All right, so what do? All right, so option 1, you take the teacher to where you heard the sound. And we take that to slide 6, but we're not going to delete this yet because we're building it. As you approach the cafeteria, you also see lights flashing. As you approach the cafeteria, you see lights flashing. Sorry, I'm kind of paraphrasing a little bit there. All right, so actually, I had to take that out. You called the teacher. Cut that out. Sorry, because we have to see how this can be complicated. You call the teacher or you go to the cafeteria. So this one, we went to slide 4. You take the teacher to where you heard the sound, and you went to the cafeteria. So as you approach the cafeteria, you also see lights flashing. So that's where I have to go right here. Option 1. As you approach the cafeteria, you see lights flashing. Wait, going back to Kevin here. Now, we saw that before, so we got to go back and review here. Do you see how this can get complicated? You call the teacher. So you call the teacher. The teacher takes you to where you heard. You take the teacher to where you heard the sound, but we need another option to happen here. And you went to the cafeteria, and as you approach the cafeteria, you heard sound. So we have to make a decision here. Right. All right. So let's quickly. Hey, we got Sudipta in here. Hi. Love my friends in India. The teacher takes you outside the building. Okay. So we're going back here. What do? Call the teacher. So then we went to 4. You call the teacher. You take the teacher to where you heard the sound. but we still can't go to the teacher takes you outside the building. It's got to be option 2, right? So now if you take the teacher to where you heard the sound, goes to slide 6, the teacher takes you outside the building, that's okay. We can go to slide 6. The teacher took you outside the building. All right, now let's go back here though. Note that goes to slide 10, right? So there's noise in the cafeteria. You call the teacher takes you to where you heard the sound, and the teacher took you outside the building. Let's go back and build from this one. You go to the cafeteria. So that takes us to slide 5. You went to the cafeteria and you see lights flashing. What happens when lights flashing? Kevin says the flashing lights draws you in. You enter the cafeteria. Flashing lights draw you in and you enter the cafeteria. All right, we're not going to slide 8 yet because we need option 2, right? So the flashing lights draw you in, you enter the cafeteria. Now I understand what you have to do with the options. Jay, yeah, you're with us. All right, so we're here and you went to the cafeteria, the lights draw you in and you enter. Let's say, for example, the lights freak you out and you call for help, right? Now, we're going a bit quick here, right? But you can see what I'm talking about. Yeah, run away. Okay, so let's, all right, so let's go with, again, note I'm going back and forth to make sure I got the story. Call the teacher. All right, and the teacher, you take the teacher to where you heard the sound, or go to the cafeteria. All right, we need another one for, when you call the teacher, you take the teacher to where, you take the teacher to where you heard the sound. What the teacher says, you're crazy. And that goes to slide 7. You get where I'm going with this, but all right, so option 1, call the teacher. That took us here. Call the teacher, and then it goes to slide 6. You take the teacher to where you heard the sound. So if I go down slide 6, the teacher took you outside the building, which is what Kevin said. The sound suddenly stops. All right, so let's do this. The sound suddenly stops. Now I could be messing this up based on what Kevin's writing, but it's because we're online and not working kind of together, or we're not online talking to each other, but it stops. What do? We'll come back to this in a minute because, all right, option 1, we called the teacher. That took us here to option 1. Option 2 was to go to the cafeteria, option 2. So there was option 1, the flashing lights, takes us to slide 8. So we go down to slide 8. The flashing lights draw you in. And I think that's what Kevin was actually saying a moment ago. So I'm going to, well, there were flashing lights here. 3 police cars arrived. Man, you're going so fast for me here. Hold on. Let's put it all together. Call the teacher. There's flashing lights. All right. And then the flashing lights takes us to number 8. And let's go with, it's the police. 3 cars, and they are entering. All right, note that I'm ad-libbing here, right, as we build this kind of thing, because I'm trying to keep with the text. Flashing lights are discotheque. All right, so actually that could be, let's go back here. Call the teacher. I advise too, you keep the goes to slide 6, goes to slide 8, so you can go back and figure things out. They take you where hear the sound. Teacher says you're crazy. All right, so let's go to slide 6. Sound suddenly stops. Maybe that's where it's the police. They have arrived. All right, I'm gonna come back here. Hold on. We're gonna wind this up in a little bit. Teacher says you're crazy, so we go to slide 7. But you're not crazy. You run away into the cafeteria because you kind of want to bring people back to the cafeteria. And what you could do too, option 1, you open the door and go in, or you stand outside and wait. Now, the thing is, this open the door and go in, I could actually not go to slide 12. I could go back to, the slide number 5 or whatever it was, kind of thing. So I do want to point out something. Now, you'll notice here that these are linked. See here where it says slide 4, slide 5, slide 6. And here it doesn't have any slide. Or slide 7. Sorry, yeah, that was a bit slow, I guess. These are all linked where you can actually use this template to build your own, choose your own adventure story. Let's very quickly look at what we've done so far. I'm trying to keep to the 45-minute timeline here. So this is to show you kind of how you do it, right? But there is a separate template that you can use. So here's the opening slide. It'd be great to put a nice background in. I can show you that at the end, how to do it. And this is the story, setting everything up. This is what's happening. And then, a longer description would be good. And then you call the teacher. Notice I got my little mouse there, or go to the cafeteria. Let's call the teacher. And you call the teacher, a little bit more explanation. And then they take you where to go. Before you give this to students, you want to delete, goes to slide 6, goes to slide 7, of course. And click here. They took you outside the building. It suddenly stops. And so we don't have anything in slide 10, but we are in slide 10. If I click option 2, notice every time. All right, so this is the end of the slide deck, but each thing has option 1, option 2. It takes you here and there, but it's all linked to future slides, right? And that I'm going to keep right there for a moment. But you get the idea. You have to pay attention as you build. And I recommend building one story at a time. And instead of linking back to, they go back to the very beginning, that would be confusing to do all the linking. So I recommend you create 2 different stories, but they can go into the same place in the end. So you can see it takes some computational thinking here and planning. So in a 45-minute session, it's kind of difficult to really put it all together, but it is a great activity for students. I think it's a good activity for us as well to kind of think about things. One that I am working on with my students is using Google Forms, and it's that refugee activity, right? So I've got the background and they have the option and they choose one, they go to the other, they keep kind of moving back and forth. This is one that I have planned out, and to be transparent, it's not finished. When it's done, I will delete the option 2A kind of stuff. And in the end, it's this. You are an internally displaced person. They all end up at the same place, to be honest. What's it like to be a refugee? It's an empathy activity, but they all come to the very same ending, but they have a different path to get there. You don't have to do that with your story, but with a Google form, actually, you kind of do. You go down to the very end, and then you click submit. If I click next here, it's going to come up. Click next. Okay, it should come up and say submit, but I haven't finished the story. So it's a little bit, like I said, a little bit complicated, but there are a lot of skills that you can learn. So I've noticed we had a number of people jump in, but we're at the end. So go ahead and look at the video. There are tutorials online that teach you how to do a choose your own adventure story with Google Forms and Google Slides. When I get time, I'll make one for both, and put it on YouTube. It does take a little bit of time, but it doesn't have to be a long thing. It can be something you can do in your class with students and work on it together. Why did you choose option 1? Why did you choose option 2? And explain, your decision making, and then kind of work on it together as you go. Maybe even debate in the class. All right, how many people want to do option 1? The majority says option 1, and that kind of thing. So it can be a class activity or an individual activity. Something short can introduce an idea, such as becoming a refugee or an internally displaced person. But anyway, here's how you can keep in touch with me. I've shared the slide deck already, but I will share them again in the YouTube comments. I do encourage you to try Choose Your Own Adventure. Give yourself some time to create it and think ahead. But it is pretty cool stuff. I've used this in my class before, but not very often. So I'm trying to up my own game. So I'm here as a let's do this together, not as the expert. Thanks a lot for joining, though. We have a whole pile of different sessions. In fact, I'll stop sharing my screen right now. We have a whole bunch of different sessions in different languages all across the world, mostly in Asia Pacific, but we do have people in like Kuwait and Mexico and Brazil, Colombia, sharing and presenting. So please check out some of the sessions that we have going on, and I'll share the doc for those that just joined, by the way. And thanks, Kevin. I appreciate you. And you too, Atika. Thanks a lot for joining. Thanks, Jay. I'm going to throw in the slide deck link one more time, and I'm going to share the other sessions that are going on in APAC. And we have some cool ones coming up, not only tomorrow and the next day, but even tonight. And also the form. And where did I put the form? Hold on one sec. I want to pull up the form for this session, actually for all sessions, where you can get a certificate. So let me just copy this and throw that in. And yes, Jay, I agree for sure. This is useful to interact with students. Let me just show that one right now. Definitely useful for students, for their thinking and collaborative skills and creativity. Even for us as teachers, though, because it's not that easy. Not difficult, but you got to think about it. So it's a great activity. And thanks, Sumeda. Thanks a ton to you. Great to see you. And Adika, I just want to throw that out there. Thanks a lot. Jay, appreciate you being here. And Kevin, of course, great to see you again. And maybe I'll see you with ETJ or online teaching Japan or something like that. And I'm going to throw that out. Thanks again, Atika. Try to do it with your students. Really kind of global group of people here today for this session. Very, very happy and very blessed. Thank you very much. So we're going to end the broadcast, though we do have some new comments. Yeah, thank you, Kevin. I will take care. And this is worth showing, actually. So Mario Ruvanalukri, I think, calls them mazes in EFL. So folks, go online and Google mazes in EFL, and that might give you some ideas. Atika, I know you're an English teacher in Malaysia, so maybe that's something you can use. Sumeda, I know you're a social studies teacher as well as I am, so maybe you can find some use for this in your class as well. Either way, it doesn't matter what you teach. I'm pretty sure we can use this. So we've hit the 45-minute mark, and I'm going to uncharacteristically end on time. Thanks, everybody. Check out what's going on with GEG Asia Pacific this weekend. Hashtag GEG APAC. There's going to be something for everybody, and we still have 2 more days to go. In fact, we still have sessions going on tonight, so check it out. Thanks for joining.